Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for holding this important hearing. It is important to continue to focus on what we're doing to gain market access for products. And yes, there's a lot that goes on between Portland and Seattle, and we're very proud of our large export markets there. So I wanted to ask first Ambassador Siddiqui about the potato market in Mexico. We've been very aggressive at trying to get Northwest product into that country. And so what are we doing to make sure we're fully opening access and resolving the issues there?
Senator, the potato issue with Mexico is a very high priority issue for both USTR and USDA. Both Ambassador Kirk and Secretary Vilsack for USDA have raised this issue during their meetings with their counterparts in Mexico. We have made it very clear to Mexico that we expect them to resolve this issue sooner than later. This 26-kilometer boundary which they have set is not based on science, and there's adequate scientific justification to support our contention, so we'd like to have that issue resolved. As you know, there was a panel, the scientific panel put together at the request of USDA, which actually agreed in principle by and large, but our contention on this issue. So we are hoping that Mexico will resolve this issue in the near future.
You think the panel of experts on?
This was on potato, it's called, it's NAPO, North American Plant Protection Organization. Panel was assembled after Secretary Vilsack met with his counterpart, Secretary Mayorga, about, I believe, about a year and a half ago. And so we're waiting for Mexico to make the move.
And when do you expect the finality of that report?
That is, Senator, hard for me to predict, but it continues to be our one of the highest priority in terms of the issues we have with Mexico in agriculture. We will expect them to resolve. And
okay. And what are we doing with South Korea and phytosanitary issues as it relates to getting apples into South Korea? What are the next steps?
Senator, I don't have the information on if you're talking about the pesticide MRL issue, but I don't. I'm
well,
not
we're
sure.
very excited, obviously, that the free trade agreement got signed, and obviously we think it represents an opportunity for a lot of Washington products, wine, probably all Northwest wine, but obviously there's lots of other products that we want to see gain access, apples being a very important Northwest product. And so we just want to see what steps we need to take to make sure that they're going to gain that access.
I was just given a note, so I think this issue has to do, I suspect it was SPS, but it's not pesticide. It has to do fire blight. It's a disease of apples where many of the countries put these restrictions against apples, but we will continue to work with our counterparts in Korea to again, lift those restrictions based on science and international standards. This is not the first time we have faced. If you remember, we had a similar issue with Japan before Japan allowed our market access for U.S. apples. So this is an old issue which comes up in many countries which either do not have the fire blight, or if they have it, they don't want to admit it.
Senator, if I might, it appears that Korea has indicated that they will begin that pest risk assessment process to assess the risk for fire blight, which is the first step in, unfortunately, a lengthy process in order to gain access. But at least that is now underway, and they will be working in concert with our regulatory officials to go through that process. So we have pushed for them to begin, and they've indicated a willingness to do so, and we'll make sure that they continue along in that process.
I hope that we're going to be aggressive about pursuing this in a timely fashion.
We absolutely will.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that courtesy. I greatly appreciate it. And panelists, thank you so much for your testimony. Mr. Kreider, I think you actually have a facility in Skagit County as well.
That's where I'm based, yes.
Great. Well, we're glad you're here, and Amy's is a good product. So thank you for having facilities in our state as well. And Mr. Thompson, I'm sending a letter to the Agricultural Committee this week in support of the MAP program. It's vitally important, and hopefully this proposed legislation will include that.
Thank you. I'd also like to point out that King Estate Winery has a winery project in the Columbia Valley, Walla Walla, and we produce Washington wines as well.
All you have to say is there's good wine in the Northwest, and that's good by us. So, Mr. Powers, I wanted to talk about apples if we could, and thank you for representing the Northwest horticulture industry and all that you do. One of the issues that I wanted to talk about was China. Obviously, they do allow access to two varieties, and yet if you look at the Yakima Valley and our production in general, 2/3, of that production, we're looking at a variety of varietals that are not allowed in China. And, we've had these issues and discussions. You heard what my questions were to our trade representatives, trying to push forward on getting access to markets. So what do we need to do to make sure that we get more than two varieties and get past these issues that are not, we don't need pest assessments. That's not what the problem is. So how do we get past this?
It's an excellent question, and a long-standing one. We've been seeking access for apples to China since the mid-'90s or the early '90s, and we do have access for two varieties. Really, varietal issues are not at the heart of SPS questions, really. I mean, if we have access for apples, we should have access for all varieties of apples. However, China doesn't necessarily see it that way. And while the two technical agencies have been involved in dialogues for years, at a certain point, and this happened a few years ago, there was a recognition that this wasn't about a technical dialogue. This was basically a political matter. And I think that's at the heart of it, what we're facing. And we're not just facing it in China, we're facing it in many countries where the technical discussions can go on and on and on, and oftentimes do, and what is needed is a political solution or a political trade-off at the end of the day that needs to occur. With China, I think that's the same situation. And it's a dicey one because, as you may know, the Chinese want access into the U.S. for their apples. And so the U.S. is working through the Animal Plant and Health Inspection Service, is working through that pest risk assessment on Chinese apples, and that process is unfolding. And we have legitimate concerns about the threat of invasive pests that might be present on apples coming from China. And so until that process works through, and we want to make sure that it is thorough, we're unlikely to see much in the way of advances on our other apple varieties into China, simply because things aren't necessarily resolved on the basis of their technical merits. And I don't have a solution, quite frankly. I think that it will have to continue to be part of the dialogue between the two governments, and hopefully a resolution will appear. But there's no real technical reason at this point related to fire blight or that wouldn't allow our apples to go.
And so what do you think the solution is from a political perspective? How do you get the issue above, the discussions that it is, on the technical points and up to the political level? What do you think that takes?
It takes more than what we've been able to do so far. I mean, I don't have a great solution to that. I think that there has to be something of value to China in order to move forward. And at this point, what we know is that they have basically said, until we allow them to have access into the U.S. for their apples, we're not going to move forward on our apple access issue.
And where do you think we are with pears?
On pears, I'm much more optimistic. Again, it's a long-standing issue. China has access to the U.S. for two varieties of its pears, and APHIS is now working on the third variety. That process is in rulemaking at this point and appears to be moving forward. And there's a clear recognition that China needs to allow us in the Northwest and in California to have access for our pears going into China. They're working on a work plan. They're being the two plant health agencies are involved in that. So we're hopeful that if perhaps by this next harvest season, or if not the next one, that the technical issues will be resolved and exports we'll be allowed to move forward.
Well, I certainly hope so, and I thank you for your work in this area. Having visited Chinese supermarkets and seeing these products there, you want to make sure that we get access, access and compensation for the products that are there. So I would hope that we could continue to make movement on these issues and find a solution that would give, this wide variety of products from our state access to that market. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.